worst heroes.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars and welcome to another classic Jean-Claude Van Damme film review. Today I'm taking a look at the 1996 martial arts adventure film, The Quest. The film is directed by Jean-Claude Van Damme himself, who also of course stars in the film. He co-wrote the film and it also stars Roger Moore, James Remar, Janet Gunn and Jack McGee. Right. The film follows Jean-Claude Van Damme's character, Christopher Dubois. We see him at the beginning of the film in 1925 in New York City. He is, well, essentially living on the streets and looking after a bunch of orphans. They make the highly intelligent decision to steal from a bunch of gangsters, which backfires, ends up with someone being killed, and Dubois realizing that he's going to get the blame for that. So he has to essentially leave the country. So while he's on the run from the police, he stows away on a freighter. He then essentially is taken under the wing of Roger Moore's character, Lord Edgar Dobbs, who presents himself as a respectable person, but in actual fact he's really a pirate. He secretly sells Van Damme to somebody on an island who trains up his skills in Muay Thai, which then leads Van Damme to desperately want to enter a contest on the Lost Island for the greatest fighters from all over the world who are invited to attend. He wishes to take part in this contest in order to make his way back to America. Right, what are my thoughts on The Quest? Well, this was made, you could argue, at the real height of Van Damme's fame. You know, he was doing well with his movies at the cinema. They were being released. They were being successful for the most part. And he was incredibly popular. And this is probably one of the biggest examples of, like, Van Damme's ego, I suspect, this film. He co-writing it, directing it, and he didn't direct another film right up until 2010. A film called Frenchie, which I've never seen or even heard of, to be honest. So clearly this wasn't a good experience for him, or he would have directed more. So this was obviously a bit of a vanity project for him. And it was a troubled production because he was in trouble really right from the start, because he was taken to court by Frank Dukes. Now, if you don't know who Frank Dukes is the character that Van Damme played in Bloodsport. They kind of became friends, sort of thing. Van Damme wrote this film for the screen. Frank Dukes sued him because he believed he stole it from him, the idea, from a story that he wrote. And essentially Frank Dukes ended up getting a writing credit on this film, which is no surprise, really, because essentially this film is a retelling of Bloodsport, really. It's a martial arts tournament film with bells and whistles on, or attempted bells and whistles on, by Van Damme. He's tried to make this film into something more than it actually is, or give it like a grand scale, an epic feel, that essentially doesn't work. And the film didn't need, to be honest. If you're going to do a top-notch martial arts tournament movie, just do it. Bloodsport worked perfectly because that's exactly what it was, and it didn't pretend to be anything else. Any martial arts tournament film, the best ones are the ones that really put the tournament as the focus. And I think that's where this film goes wrong. It tries to be this grand, epic-scaled film that doesn't work, really. And it's got manufactured drama in the film that, to try and up the ante, so to speak. And for example, the final fighter that Van Damme meets, which in actual fact is the same guy that he fought at the end of AWOL, Absent Without Leave. Was he called Attila in AWOL? That big guy with a black vest. It's the same guy he fights at the end of this film. So it feels like it's rehashing what you've seen before anyway. But there is a fighter in this tournament that is from his previous dojo, who taught him, to increase his Muay Thai skills, this dojo. And this fighter ends up getting killed by, the favourite fighter, the one that is Van Damme's direct rival. But he barely knew this fighter, really. They weren't exactly best buddies, from what I could tell. So he tries to he's like, oh, you've really got a reason to hate that fighter now. And then probably realising that wasn't really going to pull the heartstrings or, push the right buttons in the audience member, Van Damme then chooses to up the ante again by having Roger Moore's character sentenced to death for trying to steal this golden dragon that is the prize for the winner. And Van Damme kind of turns around and says, no. If I win this tournament, he lives. And you can keep the dragon, sort of thing. So again, you're thinking, well, he's got to win now, because otherwise Roger Moore's going to be killed. But you don't care. None of number one, as charming as Roger Moore is in this film, and he's probably the highlight, even though he personally didn't enjoy this film. He didn't enjoy the filming process. He didn't enjoy working alongside Van Damme, and all of this is in his autobiography. But he remained professional on set, and he regards this as one of his least favourite films he's ever done. But you can't tell that on screen. You've got the usual Roger Moore charm, but the character offers very little to the proceedings here. You can't really class him as like a mentor character for Van Damme, because essentially he tries to sell him at the beginning of the film. He's a rogue, really. He's not, he's got no loyalty to Van Damme, so it kind of doesn't work, this manufactured drama that they're trying to implement into the film. The film starts, I think, very poorly by making Van Damme look like the guardian angel of all the orphans on the streets of New York City. It's ridiculous, and it's not the brightest idea in the world if he's supposed to be protecting them, to encourage them to steal from gangsters, because literally the next scene after they do it, the gangsters boot down the door. They know exactly who did it. So he's not the greatest guardian angel in regards to these orphans. But while I have been fairly critical of the story elements of this film and some of the characters and some of the manufactured drama, when you get right down to it, the best thing by a country mile in this film is the martial arts stuff. I would argue it's probably better than the martial arts we get in Bloodsport. You get some really clever, distinct martial arts styles on display here that are very, very impressive. And it is choreographed incredibly well, and I suspect Van Damme had a lot to do with that, obviously because he's the director, but I didn't check actually if he was fight choreographer as well, or he was probably involved, I suspect. Very, very good martial arts scenes, thoroughly enjoyable, and done very, very well. I think where it let itself down is I don't think they do enough with Van Damme's character in this tournament, making him. There's a scene earlier in the film where he reveals himself as this Muay Thai fighter, really bulked up because he's been training for a while on this island where Roger Moore sold him. And Roger Moore sees him again for the first time in ages. Well, I'm presuming it's ages. It doesn't tell you how long. And he's revealed in this ring as this really menacing and brutal Muay Thai fighter. And then he gets to this tournament, and all of a sudden he's like this massive underdog. He doesn't think he's going to win the tournament. Nobody thinks he's going to win the tournament. And you're thinking, well, you've just built him up. What are you knocking him down for again? So they don't do a good job, I don't think, at making his fighter A, feel threatening enough, and B, even when they're trying to make him the underdog, they don't do that particularly well either. So it is flawed, very flawed in regards to the writing and the characters. And I mean, I haven't even mentioned James Remar, who plays a boxer in this. He's the heavyweight champion of the world who gets invited to the tournament, but gives up his place to Van Damme, which seems a bit bizarre. Again, he's not needed in the film. You just don't need him in the film at all. It's a strange choice to put someone like James Remar in this film and give him very little to do. But easily the best thing in this film is the martial arts. It's very, very good. It's well choreographed, enjoyable. Even the manufactured final fight between Van Damme and the bad guy of this film, this huge Moroccan guy, the same guy from AWOL, he's done well. And it's enjoyable, but it does feel like this is films you've seen before, like Bloodsport, that kind of stuff that Van Damme's done, and other martial arts tournament films. It feels very similar to those, and they've tried to kind of dress it up with, little things here and there, to make it this grand, epic scale of a film. And I get what Van Damme was trying to do with this. It just didn't work, and clearly didn't work. It didn't do well at the box office. It wasn't reviewed well when it came out, and you could absolutely understand why. But fans of Van Damme will get a lot out of this because of the martial arts scenes in this, and the charming performance of Roger Moore, who is obviously a massive veteran at this point in his career, and he really effortlessly breezes through this film, even if his character is not really necessary for the most part. So yeah, that's my thoughts on The Quest. I felt like I had quite a lot to say about this film after watching it. It's a long time since I've seen it. And while I say I did enjoy it, it was definitely very, very flawed. But yeah, it's worth checking out if you are a Van Damme fan and you've never seen it, or if you're a martial arts fan and you've never seen it, give it a watch. It's definitely worth seeing. From my perspective, I will of course, guys, be back with plenty more reviews and content on the channel very, very soon.